Hi Eastside family. I hope you guys are enjoying Matthew. We are at least halfway through. Today for the Discover Jesus Challenge, we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 18. Matthew chapter 18 has quite a bit of teaching from Jesus, which is always a good thing to study. But as you're reading, hopefully you guys will find some things that really hit home, things that you really find applicable to your own life. And one of those things for me was actually towards the end, starting in verse 21 of chapter 18, the last half of the chapter. It talks about a parable, a story of a man who owes a lot of money. It talks about this man owing his king 10,000 talents, which would be equal to more than most people would be able to make in several years, especially at that time. And he owed this money, and the king asked for his money, and when the man couldn't pay it, he begged the king for mercy. So reading this, I just found it to be a really interesting story because the king pardons him. The king forgives his debt. And after that, the man goes to another fellow servant and who owes him a very small amount of money. I think it says 300 denarii or 100 denarii. And he goes to this man and demands that money from him. And that man asks for mercy. But instead of giving him mercy, he throws him in prison until he can pay him back. And there's quite a contrast there between the king who forgives this huge sum of money and this servant who has just been forgiven, who has just experienced great mercy, now demanding money from one of his co-workers and showing no mercy. And all of this whole story starts with Peter asking Jesus, how many times should I forgive my brother? And I've always found this to be such a convicting story. As we look at our own lives, it's easy to begin to forget the things we have been forgiven for, the shortcomings that we have, the ways that we have failed God, just as human beings, just because we are fallen. I know when I was younger, we would often talk about how great it would be to have a really wonderful salvation story. And by that, we always meant some really big transformation, coming from some terrible background and turning to Jesus and having this huge transformation. That was when I was very young. I would think that. And now, after years of living as a follower of Christ, I've realized that we have all had a huge transformation. Sometimes we don't realize how huge that is. We don't realize just how much God has done in our lives. Sometimes we forget just how much mercy we have been given and how little mercy we deserve. And because of that, it's easy to ask that question, how many times do I need to forgive my brother? Jesus' response was to tell this story, but also basically to say there's no limit to how much forgiveness you should have in your heart, because you need to know you have been forgiven much. The very end, he gives a warning about not forgiving your brother. So it's such a convicting story for me. It's something I'm always reminded of. Often I will see people doing things and be quick to judge, quick to jump to how I think they should do something or how I could be doing it better. And often I need to be reminded, I need to be checked to really remember that I have been forgiven much. So I hope today, as you read Matthew 18 and get to know some of these parables and teachings, that God will really speak to you, I hope that you are able to see some truths in here that you can apply to your own life. And I just pray that you have a wonderful day. See ya.